so much for tuning in. My name is Kennedy Williams. I'm the founder and creative of Cowrie Archives. Cowrie Archives is an archive in which I am creating that is a collection of Black experiences, oral histories, art, and traditions. It's my way of documenting the culture to ensure that the Black culture stays alive, especially in a time like now where so many of our stories and histories are actively being targeted and erased. Cowrie Archives, in a way, is my love letter to the Black community in the United States and abroad. And I'm so excited to share with you our very first video essay to explore some of the art behind the archive. What I would say about Cowrie Archives coming to YouTube is that this is just my way of creating a digital expansion that allows us to express ourselves in more ways and reach out to broader audiences. So whether that be through these artistic video essays, whether that be through moving the podcast portion of the archive over to YouTube, or whether that just be listening to my ramblings and the ramblings of others when it comes to Black history and art. I really wanted to branch out into YouTube just for a bit more of a visual impact into Cowrie Archives and all of the different things it is that we're going to be doing. We definitely have a lot of ideas coming up in the next few weeks, so stay tuned. So for today's video essay, we're going to be talking about Black people and land connection and what it means for Black people to be connected to a land historically, geographically, and culturally. Most of my inspiration for this comes from African traditional religions like Hoodoo, and also just talking to so many Black people throughout the entire process of doing these documentations for the podcast and blog, and having so many people bring up land connection as a point of their identity and what makes them feel strong in their Blackness, from talking about things like gentrification in their city and Black people being pushed out, to talking about things like migration and immigration stories. I just noticed that there was a strong connection between Black people and the land that they lived on, and I wanted to create an artistic expression of showing this relationship. I think that throughout history, especially when it comes to the Americas, Black people and land have had an extremely complicated relationship, especially for those in the Americas who are on land that has been stolen, but who also come from ancestors that were stolen as well. I would definitely say that you'll see a lot of spiritual inspirations in this as well, just because I took a lot of visual inspiration from African traditional religions in terms of the way that they were all white, and a lot of the ideals around connections to nature, the connection between a person, a land, and a spirit, and how that identity has been so strong in Black people's history since the beginning of time. I feel like this is a beautiful relationship, and I really wanted to focus on embodying that in the best way possible, especially because that concept connects to so many of the thoughts that Black people have had in general, that they've expressed on the podcast when it comes to their identity being so heavily tied to a land. So hopefully you can kind of feel that deep relationship between Black people and nature, the historical relationship we've had with upkeeping ecosystems, learning new ecosystems, and learning to create new relationships with different plants and roots, and how that's helped us throughout history. And also you'll get a piece of that inspiration of what it looks like to have spirit and land be something that connects with you so deeply as a Black person who has land connection as such an integral piece of the culture and what it means to be Black. So for the photo shoot itself, I named this photo shoot Art, Land, and Spirit, mostly because of the inspirations for the shoot, which I mentioned before, and also because of the historical context of Black people on these lands, and the ways in which our connections with the land have become so spiritual. As someone who's not from the South, who moved to the South, I think that when you are in the Southern United States, there is a deeply spiritual connection that you have with the land as a Black person, something that makes you realize that there's an attraction to a location because that location is so tied to your history. I think we talk about that a lot when it comes to water. There's so many stories of Black people in port cities and on water and shores, but I also wanted to talk about how that connection feels with trees and with land itself. I would say that because we did this photo shoot in Georgia at Tribble Mills Park, I think that there's something to be said about our connection with forests as well, our connection with farming land, toiling land, working land, our connection with planting, growing, and harvesting on land, and our connection with dirt and insects and animals that I think that we don't often talk about when we talk about our connections with nature. They can be so heavily focused on water at times, and so I wanted to give a spin on that and just talk a little bit more about our connection to nature. And so you will see that in the pictures because they are there is some elements of water, but they're heavily focused around forests and those kinds of environments that are common to find in Georgia. I think that the connection with the South specifically is also very prominent in this photo shoot, specifically because we did do it in Georgia, and also because most of the people in the photo shoot are native to Georgia. But of course, this concept can apply to Black people in the United States, in the Caribbean, in Latin America, on the continent. And so if you have any strong feelings that come up about this shoot that make you feel more connected to where you're from, then I believe that the photo shoot is doing exactly what it needs to do. So please enjoy these next few pictures, and I will give short explanations for the inspirations behind each of them and what they're all about. This photo shoot was shot in Tribble Mills Park around September of this year, as I mentioned before. It was a beautiful photo shoot. I was so inspired by the Southern Gothic kind of vibes. I really went with that and liked that and picked that because I do feel like a lot of times with the Southern Gothic vibe, it's haunting, but it's also so deeply beautiful that you can physically feel the power and the connection behind each photo. And so even though the sun was not out and it was very overcast and it started raining while we were doing the photo shoot, I thought that the gloominess was actually perfect because although we did not go with the actual Southern Gothic style of dress, I feel like it still really gave that feeling of the hauntingness of the South. And in that hauntingness, I feel like there was so much beauty that it kind of showed the strength of the connection between Black people and land that I was looking for. And so there were so many different little groves and pathways and hills and so many different sides of the lake that I feel like Tribble Mills Park was the perfect place for us to shoot. And the time and the weather was the perfect weather for this photo shoot because everything came out so beautifully, and I feel like it really ended up playing in our favor because it showed so much of that beautiful haunting beauty and that connection that I really wanted to share. I think you can really see that beauty as we move forward into the pictures, so let me go ahead and get started. This picture is extremely beautiful to me. What you see here is two people in a field. There's a lake next to it, and they are kind of just enjoying the air and the weather. What we have is kind of a scene of divinity, of comfortability. There's an essence of a spiritual element and also a feeling of being so in touch with the body, nature, and with the self as well. I think what I wanted to have expressed in this photo was kind of that feeling of the embodiment of nature and how it connects to beauty. And I just really love the contrast of all of the green with the white and then the skin. I feel like it's such a beautiful example of what Blackness looks like in a divine, beautiful context, and in a context surrounded by what we would call divinity, which in this case is nature, and the ways in which that the environment of nature and the cleanliness of the white cloth really elevates the skin tone, and it really highlights the Blackness in this photo. Both people in this photo also both have natural hairstyles, so that's another thing. I think we're really embracing all aspects of Blackness within this photo shoot. So you will see different natural hairstyles, in this case a fro and locks. And so I think it's really about not just embracing nature, but also embracing a sense of being as natural as possible. The second photo, or this next photo, is an image of two people holding hands. Now here, these are the same people who were on the blanket. This is kind of a continuation of the love story of the first photo. The first photo did show that relationship between divinity, duality, and kind of showing partnership in a way, standing strong in the feeling of the self, of the nature, and of the relationship to one another. And so this kind of goes on about it. I think that this is a picture that tells a story about friendship, and I do think that this is a story that I do think that this is a picture that shares a story of I do think this is a picture that shares a story about beauty in friendship as well. I think that the accent of the gold jewelry, the white, the nature in the background, and the focus on the relationship through the hand holding really expresses and continues the story of the picture before it. I love these pictures paired together. I think they're beautiful together. And I think that they continue that story of having a divine relationship with nature, with yourself, and what that looks like to have that relationship go into your relationships with other people, and what a community can look like and feel like in the context of embracing all that is nature and Blackness. This next picture that we have here is of a scene of these plants being held in the arms of our model. You see some dainty jewelry on the model, and of course they're also wearing white. You can kind of see their hair coming in a little bit on this picture, the pink locks, and I think that this picture is absolutely gorgeous. I love the feeling of delicacy that you have in this picture. It's very dainty, it's very light, but at the same time, it really expresses that connection. I think it is because the leaf is being held so delicately, so sweetly, as if it's, a dear friend to the person. It's also just the way that this picture came about. We're taking pictures of the model and we're like, try to look like you're feeling more connected. Like, just go into nature and do what you would usually do. And they picked up the stick and they were like, this is what I would usually do. The way that they were so interactive with the nature around them was so beautiful to me. They felt so comfortable the entire time, like they were really in their element. And I feel like that's genuinely what this entire shoot was about being Black and having that connection with nature. And so watching them so effortlessly go out there and be like, I feel connected to these trees and I'm going to take this branch and I'm going to make art out of it, was such an inspiring moment. And the shot is just amazing. The shot we got from that is literally beautiful. As you can see in this next picture, we have them up against a boulder. There is, again, still that feeling of daintiness, still that feeling of divinity. Honestly, she really kind of looks like a flower in this picture, kind of a blooming sense of brightness amongst the forest. You do still have that very divine, very gothic feeling over the entire picture. And I think you do still have that sense of a deep connection. I think in this pose specifically, we do kind of see that feeling of comfort, that feeling of this is my home. I can relax here. I can connect to my highest self here. I can truly let go and be who I am when I am surrounded by nature. So I thought it was really beautiful. I thought it was an amazing expression, and I loved watching them kind of find their way around the forest to get these amazing shots. So I'm super grateful we were able to get these shots, and it was such an amazing journey to get to this and to watch that connection with nature kind of truly come about, not just as a concept, but in the way that the model interacted with the forest. Here we have another beautiful example of being engulfed, encapsulated in nothing but green. I really feel like this picture gives a kind of Alice in Wonderland vibe, like going into the hole, going into that oasis, transporting yourself into another world. I think the element of the water, as well as the ability to kind of see a path ahead, really gives into that feeling. I also feel like it's the path being, you're able to see it, but it is very engulfed in the green. And so it does feed over to like that venturing into the unknown or exploring the unexplored kind of vibe. The contrast of the stark white dress is just gorgeous. And I think it's also the model having their back turned to us kind of makes us feel that they're looking forward into a future of sorts. I do also get a Southern Gothic vibe from this. I know I mentioned we shot this at Tribble Mills Park in Georgia. I feel like that kind of vibe of like a haunting South is throughout all of these pictures. However, it feels so spiritual. It feels so divine, but it also feels so haunting at the same time. I feel like the pose, the gloominess, the water, the unseen path, it all combines in a way that's so gorgeous, and it creates such an amazing scene. Like, this looks like it could be for a movie. Like, you could write an entire script based on this picture. So I think that it's really beautiful. I also love pairing this picture with the next picture I'm going to show here. You see we have the same model here with their back to us as they're facing the lake. I know I mentioned elements of water in this shoot, and I think these pictures is where the water really comes in. It kind of pushes you towards that idea of transformation, but it also pushes you towards that idea of connection. And the reason I say that is because, as we know, water holds memory. And so when we are interacting with these lakes, these rivers, and we're feeling called to them, it can be because of a feeling of resonance, a feeling of comfort that you get when you are near a large body of water. And I do feel that comfort coming through on both of these pictures. I think that the water reflecting all the green and reflecting all the beauty also helps to really create that encapsulated and comforting vibe. But at the same time, it's the wilderness of it all. And you can see that our model really genuinely looks like they are exploring that wilderness. They're feeling called to the wilderness. They're feeling intrigued by it. And so it's that curiosity, that willingness to go into the nature, and that willingness to explore and to connect, that I think makes these pictures so striking and so beautiful. And I think that I would like to think that that is the story of both of these pictures together as well. That exploration of that connection with water and with nature, and going down that path and seeing where it leads you in your journey to reconnecting with land. I know I say I love every single picture, but I love this picture. It's actually so funny because the way that we even happened upon this field was hilarious. Like, we were driving around looking for somewhere to shoot, and we were like, what is that down there? Because it looked like just a dark pathway. And we got down there and we actually discovered this beautiful little, I don't know what to call it. It was just like a field of this very tall, beautiful green plant. It was spread out across only this area, and it felt like we'd stepped into kind of a magical little center where this plant was only growing there. We literally didn't see it anywhere else, and so it felt like a calling to take advantage of such beauty. We were completely covered by trees, and so the lighting was kind of streaming in through the leaves in just the perfect way. And so when we had our model go ahead and look up at the sky, it genuinely looked like he was talking to God. And I think that that's what moves me so much about this picture, is how spiritual it is, without trying too hard. It's like just by looking at the sky, just by feeling so connected to all the green and the nature surrounding him, he looks like he's completely enmeshed in this area. Like if he has known nothing but this for his entire life, and like it's so natural for him to just talk to God. I do also get like a sense of like pleading, a sense of like a deep love, like calling to the sky. And I love that as well. I think because of the way that the light poured in, it really made for the perfect kind of visual of heaven, or reaching up to heaven, or heaven reaching down to you. And in a way, it's like we found this beautiful little oasis that kind of led us directly to the divinity that we were looking for in nature. And nature did the exact correct thing for us to get the shot. So I genuinely really love it. It does have a sister shot. As you can see here, this is him reaching up to the sky. I really like this picture as well. I think the point of this pose was just to block out the light a little bit. So I feel like in a way, if the first picture is him calling to God, then the second picture could be God himself coming down and kind of being shined too brightly in the eyes by that heavenly essence. I would say that I love this photo set. You can really see how tall the grass is here too. His feet and ankles are completely covered. This plant was just so beautiful, so green and bright, and it really felt like being in an oasis. There was hills all around us, so we were in like a mini valley of sorts. And you could tell that all the water kind of pooled there to create so much life. And I think that's also kind of beautiful and really speaks to this idea of having an oasis, like this kind of safe space where you can hide away and keep yourself in your own little piece of heaven through nature and through connecting with nature. So I love these shots. The next photo we're going to be looking at is a pretty well-known Cowrie Shell Archives photo. This is one of the photos we use for our website as well. And I like to think of this photo as witnessing a birth. I think I feel that way because of the water in the background. If you look closely, you can see the raindrops falling onto the lake. It was literally raining this entire shoot, but we just went with the gloomy vibe because I feel like it really gave it that haunting beauty that I was looking for. Between that and the gold bracelets that really kind of emphasize that daintiness, really emphasizes the wealth, the beauty that we're expressing here. And then the cowrie shell being held so delicately and dropped into an expectant hand. This was beautifully, creatively designed by Day on Diary, and I think it's an amazing photo. I really love it, and I feel like I use it so much for Cowrie Shell Archives related things. So yeah, what I really wanted to share about this photo is the feeling of birth that it gives, because I think in a way it's the nature encapsulating the scene that makes it feel so powerful, that really draws you in. I think it's also so well edited because it does center the cowrie shell, and the colors of the skin and the gold pop out in just the right way, and it's just encapsulated by nothing but green. It's gorgeous. Like I say with every single photo, I love this photo. We got some amazing and really funny behind the scenes shots with this. The behind the scenes of this shoot was literally amazing. Between myself as the creative director and having two photographers, which were Isaiah Polite and Dayon Diary, I think that it was just so much fun doing this, despite all the ups and downs and twists and turns of like deciding location and deciding this and that. I had so much fun. There were like crazy things we did to get the perfect shot, like Day standing on the edge of a dock on top of a wooden board, like the wooden boards that like hold the docks up, or like Isaiah bending into these really interesting positions to get the shot for myself, or even me at the last minute being like, hey, do you mind climbing on that tree? Or like, do you think you could like go into that field even though there's like lumps and holes and we don't know if there's snakes? Like, we did some really insane stuff, but I'm really proud of us, and I'm so happy to have such an amazing team who's willing to do the most to help me execute a vision. And so I hope we can continue to work together, and I really just want to thank them for all of their time and all of their creative effort and help, and their belief in making Cowrie Shell Archive's first video essay something that can really be brought to life, and to help spread that message of the importance of Black land connection and all of the issues that impacts today. Something that was extremely important in the messaging that I wanted to share is that our land connection is very strong and very real, and I think it's extremely important that as Black people we pay close attention to things like global warming, things like climate change, and things like gentrification, things that we might not necessarily see as Black issues that are actually impacting Black people the most. I think as we've seen with things like Hurricane Helene happening and so many Black people either not having good hurricane resources or not being able to evacuate certain spaces because of a lack of resources, and even when you connect that to gentrification and the ways that we've been pushed into undesirable neighborhoods, we've seen with things like the recent chemical explosion in Atlanta that Black neighborhoods were some of the first neighborhoods to be strongly affected, and how we are not protected as a people. Things like food deserts, things like our neighborhoods being placed in cancer zones. There are so many just examples of the environmental racism and the way that climate change is impacting Black people that shows up in our daily lives. And especially when you think about it in a context of living abroad, and when you think about the ways that imperialism is impacting our environment and how that hurts Black people in developing countries the most. When you think about hurricanes in the Caribbean, when you think about exploitation in Congo and Sudan and how that has led to Black genocide, I think that it's so important to talk about our connection to the land, not only just to understand from a spiritual and a historical perspective what it means for us to be from a place or to adapt to being in a place, but also what it looks like for us to protect a place and how protecting a place can help us protect ourselves, and what it means for Black people to champion the environment as one of our main concerns as a people who are often most affected by our environment, and the ways in which our environment's changing or being taken from us or being taken from an environment can completely derail our culture, our way of living, our lives, and even put us at risk for major horrible events to happen, like what's going on in Haiti or like what's going on in Congo and Sudan. I think that these things are extremely important to talk about because it's a part of what makes our survival. And so I feel like if we are able to bring up those feelings of pride and passion for our land, it will help us realize our connection to what it means to actually what it means to actually push ourselves to create an activism that is inclusive of caring about imperialism, caring about climate change, and caring about the planet as a means of caring for ourselves as a Black community. And so that was one of the main messages I really wanted people to get, because I think that land connection is extremely important to not just me and you, but to Black people as a whole, and of course to everyone on the planet in general. But I feel that as a Black person, I want to speak specifically to my people, because we have been victims of being removed from lands, from our lands being pillaged, and from even of our knowledge of a land, even of our knowledge of what it means to grow on a land, to harvest on a land, what it means to have a relationship with a plant and bring life from that. We have been so exploited of that knowledge and exploited of those relationships and exploited of our lands themselves, that I think that it's extremely important to realize that connection and make sure that we're always putting it first when we're thinking about the good of our community. There's so many implications to this when it comes to climate change in general and the things we're currently seeing, like from the examples I gave of things that literally happened earlier this year, and of course of things that have been happening throughout history, and who knows what we'll see in the future when it comes to climate change. I mean, it's literally still 80 degrees and we're halfway through October, so I mean, who knows what the next year and a half will even look like. But I think that if we are putting this on the front of our mind as a people, that will help make us stronger to move as a community. And of course, what I want to see for Black people is constantly to see us thriving and to see our communities developing in a way that's most beneficial for all of us, in a way that truly means something, not just in a way that's capitalistic, but in a way that ensures our survival no matter what. I feel that it's important for Black people to reconnect with nature, to reconnect with what it means to nourish a land, to have a relationship with a plant, to have a relationship with growing, to have a relationship with animals and understand what our survival can look like, to understand what were the methods that our ancestors employed to maintain a land, to feed themselves, and how can we take those in a modern context and ensure that we're still able to maintain those connections and feed ourselves, to make sure that these connections are not lost to the modern ways, and to make sure that we're holding on to our culture and tradition, because so much can be lost culturally, historically, spiritually, by being so disconnected from a land and by being removed from a place that is supposed to be home for you. We see this with gentrification in so many cities across the United States and even in other countries. People are constantly being removed from neighborhoods and the culture goes with them, right? And so it gets even deeper than that. It's literally the trees itself, the river itself, the grass itself that can feel the difference in our presence being removed from an area, because that relationship we had with nourishing the area is removed when we are removed from it. And so there's a symbiosis that goes with Black Indigenous communities and their relationship to the places that they live. And of course, we are innovators as Black people. We are people who are constantly learning how to create new relationships with new lands that we live on. But it's still important for us to make sure that we're maintaining the connections that we already have established, and to stop the violence of displacement from impacting so many of us globally, to stop the violence of food deserts, to stop the violence of starvation that's impacting so many of our people globally, to stop the violence of imperialism that's impacting us. And I do truly believe that so much of the issues that we have as a people now, land connection does impact that. And so I would say that through gaining this knowledge, I want to call people to action, to move forward to protection, and to move forward to fighting more fiercely for what we do have and reclaiming what is ours. I really hope that you enjoyed all of these beautiful pictures. I hope that you resonate with the message. I hope that it finds you in some way, whether that be physically, spiritually, mentally, or even if you just agree with some of the statements I mentioned. I'd love to hear what other people have to say about what it means to be someone who fosters a land connection as a Black person. And overall, I would also love to hear, not overall, I would also love to hear any ideas for future projects. We do want to make sure that we're dropping projects at least once a month, so hopefully we can keep up with that. So if anyone has any beautiful ideas about Black people's relationship to water, to metal, or just Black people's relationship to each other, interculturally, cross-culturally, any concepts that you'd love to see Cowrie Shell Archives document and execute, I would love to hear that down below in the comments. I'm also so excited to share with you what we're going to be working on in the next few weeks, not only with video essays, but just our YouTube projects and our blog projects in general. And of course, make sure that you're keeping up with us on cowrieshellarchives.com, where we will have an archive of every single project we've done, as well as keeping up with the blog every week. We do eventually in the future want to move to doing our in the future, we eventually do want to move to having all of our interviews on YouTube, so stay tuned for that as well. Of course, you can keep up with us on social media. We're on Instagram, Cowrie Shell Archives. We are on Substack as Cowrie Shell Archives. That's where our blog and podcast mainly is. We're now on YouTube as Cowrie Shell Archives. And as I said before, we have our website, cowrieshellarchives.com. If you want to keep up with me as well, I am on TikTok as OK Kennedy and on Instagram as OK Kennedy. Thank you so much for indulging my vision. Thank you so much for hanging out with me as I watch the sun go down in Grant Park. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.